I think Harry's going to be there, so I'm going to put Harry in there. DCE's going through a bit of a form fight here at the moment in terms of Manly, but I still think he's the 7. Yeah. Munster, and I think Kalen Ponga is my man out the back.
Manly at the moment, geez, just a detour for... There's no doubt that this is... The whole DCE thing that has gone on the last couple of weeks has impacted him.
Yeah, I think he's had the right intentions, Cherry Evans, and no one still doesn't know what he's doing, but I think it's got to the point where, like, he probably needs to just get it out there and move on, right?
I think so.
I think so. And the origin part to me is he's the captain of Queensland. He's had a really good rep career at the back end of it. This potentially, he needs to stand up because that's my starting spot. It's Ponga, Munster, DCE, Grant.
Ponga, Munster, DCE, Grant. It's pretty decent. Yeah, pretty decent. The rookie, because Billy likes to bring blokes in the scene. Walsh a couple of years ago, he brought the hammer in a couple of years ago. Yeah,
like when you talk about there's a bit of back row jostling around, Trent Liero could be there on a bench, something like that. I think Kurt Capewell has great flexibility, so he could be on that bench cover, but someone like Piakura, he there's no Dave Fifita, so you're looking for like this back rower who could play in the middle that can hit hard, carry strong. Piakura might be a chance of getting a spot on the bench and making his debut. He could have a little bit of an impact as a rookie for me.
What do you think? Who's going to be the player this year for Queensland?
So I've got Dearden on the bench.
You've got him on the bench?
I'm going to put Dearden on the bench for that cover. Ben Hunt's not there, whatever. He will just not let down Queensland. So I'll just put him out there and let him do his thing. But I think if I had to pick up my moment or the player of the series, it's got to be Munster. He's in good form. He's as fit as he's ever been. And he has got, I'm not saying he's Wally Lewis, but he has got moments like him. Yeah. Like he's got moments like the good Origin players have where he says, I want the ball, and he can deliver. And I think after losing last year, I reckon Munster's our man.
Coops, I think you can absolutely say Munster and Wally in the same sentence. If you look at Munster's State of Origin record, what he's done from his debut, even to the point during the COVID years, basically off a couple of days off the sauce after winning the grand final, to be the player of the series.
I just don't like comparing sort of generations and things like that, but he has definitely got characteristics like Wally can. And over to your mob, what do you got? Who's the half? Give me the halves. Give me the halves.
Well, Coop, look, if I'm naming it now, the obvious one is Cleary and Moses. Yep. Right? But it comes with a bit of a warning. I mean, it appears perfect, but there is always a danger of picking two chief playmakers together, because one has to suppress themselves a little bit. So there's an argument to saying, Cleary Luai. I mean, they have got a relationship and a combination that has been formed. Luai he's a pure 6, although he's playing in that primary playmaker role at the Tigers. So there's a school of thought of that, and I go back to, I want your thoughts too when you played alongside JT, because it was very, very similar, is if you go back to, going back in time here, but 1990, a perfect example on a Kangaroo tour. They're up against Great Britain at Wembley in Game 1, and the two best players in the world at that point were Alan Langer and Ricky Stewart. So Bob Fulton had a decision to make, and then finally went, you know what? I'm going to put them in together. Alf at halfback, Ricky at 6. It just didn't work. Didn't work. It was oil and water.
Yeah, well, I think for me, it's Cleary and Moses, and it's Laurie's job to realise that the New South Wales Blues jersey is more important than the individual performance and heroics, right? Yeah. So using my experience with Thurston and Lockie at different stages, the thing that I had in my favour, or we had, was Cameron, Billy and myself, right? So it didn't matter if it was the 35th minute or the 78th, we could fall into rhythm. And when Cameron picked the ball up on his left side and hesitated, I knew he was bouncing back to the right, and Billy reacted to that. The thing about Jono is Jono was the chief guy for the Cowboys for the whole time. When he sat there and wanted the ball, I had to make sure that he got the ball. Because when he wanted it, he saw something. So it was my job to maybe flip from the other side of the field to get the ball to Jono. But the thing that made us work together was that the Queensland Origin jersey was way more important than any individual. And that's Laurie's job. That's exactly what Mal... He didn't say that to us, but when you arrived in camp, you realised, yes, we're both 7s. yes, we both want to be chief, but what's more important?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's right.
For Queensland or being the chief, right?
And I think Cleary and Moses could work that out. I think they would,
yeah. What about Jake Trbojevic? Is he in your team?
Jake is such a sweetheart and everyone loves. The people who are leaving Jake out, you can see they always start with, oh.
Yeah. And then they say, but.
God, you know, I must. I'll tell you now, right?
Yep.
I was having a discussion yesterday with a bloke with this. We're having a bit of a chat of all things. It wasn't rugby league. And we're talking about, you know, in the turn going into the 20th century, the two rules of war used to be, it was a British Prime Minister that once said it, he said, rule number 1, don't invade Afghanistan. And rule number 2 is don't invade Afghanistan, right? Now that lesson hasn't. Now I'll tell you why. Now that lesson hasn't been heeded. That's an old that people have learned over a long time. Yet people don't learn it. We've seen the Soviets go in there, and then we went in there. And every time someone goes in, they just don't. It's never a success.
Yeah.
The rules of state of origin football, from a Blues point of view, is don't get rid of Jake Trbojevic.
So you're picking him.
2 rules: Jake Trbojevic, don't axe him, don't get rid of him, because Coops. It's been done before.
Yep.
And almost every time that he's been left out of the side or been axed, he's been put in the side for the next game.
Yep.
Because...
Well, his spirit, right?
Because that's the spirit. Yep. That's right.
That's
because, you know, regardless, you know, you look at those, without Jake Trbojevic, we got the talent, yes. You know, we got the toughness, yes. We got, you know, this, yep. But when he's in the side, he just gives an injection of emotion and spirit.
Next question.
Yep.
Is he a captain or do you start him?
I do start him. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to be my captain. I don't know. He doesn't need the C alongside his name. For me, that's not an important one. But I do start him. I do start him in the side. I'm really conscious that if we go Cleary and Moses, I want to make sure that at the start of the game we're not going to start by playing too east-west and too much passing. So I start with Jake and I bring Isaiah off the bench.
Yep.
Keep Isaiah out of that early stuff, and then bring him on after about 25 minutes, and then start to play a little bit more football. But I want, particularly at the start of the game, I actually want to see Nathan run the football more than pass. I want to see more running than passing to get himself, because that's. When I see Nathan start the game and start to take some bumps and get hit, that's when I go, OK, he's on, and he's got his compass right.
And then Isaiah Yeo comes on and provides that ability to promote the ball.
Does a little bit more with the football. But I pick Jake because, you know, like, he's not in great form.
Yep.
Right. He's not a spring chicken anymore. But when I look over at the other bunker, what Queensland have done over years, you know, they would pick players who are terrible form sometimes. Rowdy Shearer, and they put him in, he perform. You know, Gilmeister might be struggling a little bit, but they put him in and he performs. And for me, Jake Trbojevic is one of those players.
Backline?
Backline, and look, there's going to be, you know, talks about fitness and all that sort of stuff. Let me just pick a side on the surface, what I would do. Dylan Edwards at fullback.
Yep.
On the wings, I'd had Tom Trbojevic on one wing. On the other wing, next weekend would be a shootout between Brighton To'o and Lomax.
Yep.
Lomax comes back. I thought there's no doubt that Brian looked underdone. He would be. He hasn't played a lot of football, but it'd be one of those two. And in the centres, simple, Stephen Crichton, Latrell Mitchell. And when I look at those blokes, I look at Dylan Edwards, Tom Trbojevic, To'o Lomax, Stephen Crichton, Latrell Mitchell, and then I look at my halves and go Moses and Cleary, and I just go, they just can't beat us.
Oh, there you go.
That's what, in my mind, I say. I look at the talent of that side, but you know, there's leadership there. Yep. There's some very, very special players in that group, and
you just mentioned you got the 17 best players in the world playing for New South Wales. So who's the one that stands out? I went Munster. Who have you got to counter Munster?
Oh, Cleary.
Nathan.
Yeah, I think this will be his series. I think it'll be his series. And if I had an X Factor player, like if we're talking about X Factor, our 14, for instance, it's Connor, because the side that I would pick, you know, would not have a person. You know, when I looked at the side and I penned a few things down, and things might change and whatnot, but I didn't have a player that could slip into that dummy half role.
Yeah, I think you have to. Yeah.
So the 14 for me has got to be Connor Watson. Yeah. But I tell you, mate, if I'm Laurie Daly, I'm sitting there yesterday going, excuse me. I'm actually going, holy hell, how do I get Pappenhausen into my 17?
You got the 17 best players in the world.
Yeah, I know. We can do it with
You want the 18th.
And yeah, and we said last week about Terrell May. My temptation would be to put Terrell May in the 17, but the first game is up in a Suncorp Stadium. I'd actually have Terrell 18th man and just let him experience the build-up outside of being a starter in that 17.
I half thought that Terrell May's origin audition was against the Melbourne Storm. To go down to Melbourne, play at their home deck after a big loss.
Yeah.
After that performance, I think he's taken a back seat.
Yeah. I'd have him. I'd still have him in the squad. I'd have him 18th man to get up there and just sample it first time around.